Chapters 25, 26, and 27 of The Golden Bough. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Sheila Morton, Jefferson City, Tennessee. The Golden Bough by Sir James Frazer, Chapter 25. Temporary Kings. In some places, the modified form of the old custom of regicide, which appears to have prevailed at Babylon, has been further softened down. The king still abdicates annually for a short time, and his place is filled by a more or less nominal sovereign. But at the close of his short reign, the latter is no longer killed, though sometimes a mock execution still survives, as a memorial of the time when he was actually put to death. To take examples, in the month of Mayak, or February, the king of Cambodia annually abdicated for 3 days. During this time he performed no act of authority. He did not touch the seals, he did not even receive the revenues which fell due. In his stead there reigned a temporary king called Sdak Miak, that is, King February. The office of temporary king was hereditary in a family distantly connected with the royal house, the sons succeeding the fathers and the younger brothers the elder brothers, just as in the succession to the real sovereignty. On a favourable day fixed by the astrologers, the temporary king was conducted by the mandarins in triumphal procession. He rode one of the royal elephants, seated in the royal palanquin, and escorted by soldiers who, dressed in appropriate costumes, represented the neighbouring peoples of Siam, Annam, Laos, and so on. In place of the golden crown he wore a peaked white cap, and his regalia, instead of being of gold encrusted with diamonds, were of rough wood. After paying homage to the real king, from whom he received the sovereignty for 3 days, together with all the revenues accruing during that time, though this last custom has been omitted for some time, he moved in procession round the palace and through the streets of the capital. On the 3rd day after the usual procession, the temporary king gave orders that the elephants should trample underfoot the mountain of rice, which was a scaffold of bamboo surrounded by sheaves of rice. The people gathered up the rice, each man taking home a little with him to secure a good harvest. Some of it was also taken to the king, who had it cooked and presented to the monks. In Siam, on the 6th day of the moon in the 6th month, the end of April, a temporary king is appointed, who for 3 days enjoys the royal prerogatives, the real king remaining shut up in his palace. This temporary king sends his numerous satellites in all directions to seize and confiscate whatever they can find in the bazaar and open shops. Even the ships and junks which arrive in harbour during the 3 days are forfeited to him and must be redeemed. He goes to a field in the middle of the city, whither they bring a gilded plough drawn by gaily decked oxen. After the plough has been anointed and the oxen rubbed with incense, the mock king traces 9 furrows with the plough, followed by the aged dames of the palace scattering the first seed of the season. As soon as the 9 furrows are drawn, the crowd of spectators rushes in and scrambles for the seed which has just been sown, believing that, mixed with the seed rice, it will ensure a plentiful crop. Then the oxen are unyoked, and rice, maize, sesame, sago, bananas, sugar-cane, melons, and so on are set before them. Whatever they eat first will, it is thought, be dear in the year following, though some people interpret the omen in the opposite sense. During this time the temporary king stands leaning against a tree with his right foot resting on his left knee. From standing thus on one foot, he is popularly known as King Hop, but his official title is Phaya Folotep, Lord of the Heavenly Hosts. He is a sort of minister of agriculture. All disputes about fields, rice, and so forth are referred to him. There is, moreover, another ceremony in which he personates the king. It takes place in the 2nd month, which falls in the cold season, and lasts 3 days. He is conducted in procession to an open place opposite the temple of the Brahmins, where there are a number of poles dressed like maypoles, upon which the Brahmins swing. All the while that they swing and dance, the Lord of the Heavenly Hosts has to stand on one foot upon a seat which is made of bricks plastered over, covered with a white cloth, and hung with tapestry. He is supported by a wooden frame with a gilt canopy, and 2 Brahmins stand one on each side of him. The dancing Brahmins carry buffalo horns with which they draw water from a large copper cauldron and sprinkle it on the spectators. This is supposed to bring good luck, causing the people to dwell in peace and quiet, health and prosperity. The time during which the Lord of the Heavenly Hosts has to stand on one foot is about 3 hours. This is thought, quote, to prove the dispositions of the devatas and spirits, unquote. If he lets his foot down, quote, he is liable to forfeit his property and have his family enslaved by the king, as it is believed to be a bad omen, portending destruction to the state and instability to the throne. But if he stand firm, he is believed to have gained a victory over evil spirits, and he has moreover the privilege, ostensibly at least, of seizing any ship which may enter the harbour during these 3 days, and taking its contents, and also of entering any open shop in the town, and carrying away what he chooses." End quote. Such were the duties and privileges of the Siamese King Hop, down to about the middle of the 19th century or later. Under the reign of the late enlightened monarch, this quaint personage was to some extent both shorn of the glories and relieved of the burden of his office. He still watches, as of old, the Brahmans rushing through the air in a swing suspended between 2 tall masts, each some 90 feet high, but he is allowed to sit instead of stand, and although public opinion still expects him to keep his right foot on his left knee during the whole of the ceremony, he would incur no legal penalty were he, to the great chagrin of the people, to put his weary foot to the ground. Other signs, too, tell of the invasion of the East by the ideas and civilization of the West. The thoroughfares that lead to the scene of the performance are blocked with carriages. Lamp-posts and telegraph posts, to which eager spectators cling like monkeys, rise above the dense crowd. And while a tatterdemalion band of the old style, in gaudy garb of vermilion and yellow, bangs and tootles away on drums and trumpets of an antique pattern, the procession of barefooted soldiers in brilliant uniforms steps briskly along to the lively strains of a modern military band playing "March Through Georgia." On the first day of the 6th month, which was regarded as the beginning of the year, the king and people of Samarcand used to put on new clothes and cut their hair and beards. Then they repaired to a forest near the capital, where they shot arrows on horseback for 7 days. On the last day the target was a gold coin, and he who hit it had the right to be king for 1 day. In Upper Egypt, on the first day of the solar year by Coptic reckoning, that is, on the 10th day of September, when the Nile has generally reached its highest point, the regular government is suspended for 3 days, and every town chooses its own ruler. This temporary lord wears a sort of tall fool's cap and a long flaxen beard, and is enveloped in a strange mantle. With a wand of office in his hand, and attended by men disguised as scribes, executioners, and so forth, he proceeds to the governor's house. The latter allows himself to be deposed, and the mock king, mounting the throne, holds a tribunal, to the decisions of which even the governor and his officials must bow. After 3 days the mock king is condemned to death. The envelope or shell in which he was encased is committed to the flames, and from its ashes the fellah creeps forth. The custom perhaps points to an old practice of burning a real king in grim earnest. In Uganda the brothers of the king used to be burned because it was not lawful to shed the royal blood. The Mohammedan students of Fez in Morocco are allowed to appoint a sultan of their own, who reigns for a few weeks and is known as Sultan Tutulba, the Sultan of the Scribes. This brief authority is put up for auction and knocked down to the highest bidder. It brings some substantial privileges with it, for the holder is freed from taxes thenceforward, and he has the right of asking a favour from the real sultan. That favour is seldom refused. It usually consists in the release of a prisoner. Moreover, the agents of the student sultan levy fines on the shopkeepers and householders against whom they trump up various humorous charges. The temporary sultan is surrounded with the pomp of a real court, and parades the streets in state with music and shouting, while a royal umbrella is held over his head. With the so-called fines and free-will offerings, to which the real sultan adds a liberal supply of provisions, the students have enough to furnish forth a magnificent banquet, and altogether they enjoy themselves thoroughly, indulging in all kinds of games and amusements. For the first 7 days the mock sultan remains in the college. Then he goes about a mile out of the town and encamps on the bank of the river, attended by the students and not a few of the citizens. On the 7th day of his stay outside the town he is visited by the real sultan, who grants him his request, and gives him 7 more days to reign, so that the reign of the "Sultan of the Scribes" nominally lasts 3 weeks. But when 6 days of the last week have passed, the mock sultan runs back to the town by night. This temporary sultanship always falls in spring, about the beginning of April. Its origin is said to have been as follows. When Mulai Rashid II was fighting for the throne in 1664 or 1665, a certain Jew